So welcome back, everyone. We're talking with Tiffany Phelan, and she's the owner of Senior Helpers. Interesting, we're sitting here, and anybody who has a loved one that's getting a little bit older, or you're doing it yourself already, you know exactly what Tiffany is talking about. You could totally relate, because pretty much everyone goes through probably very similar things all the time. You're there to help them be able to stay in their home, be able to do some of the things. Maybe they need a companion so that you can take them to go just to their, appointments during the week.
Sure.
Right? And I want to ask this before you go into some of these other things, is that, is there is it the limit? What is it that they can do, their maximum amount or the least amount of time?
Okay, so there are folks that are with us 4 hours once a week. Now, we don't want to go fewer visits than that, than once a week, because we want consistency. And one of the really neat things about hiring a caregiver is that our job is to match personality. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But even your most ornery, challenging, grumpy people can have that right person who can speak to them in a way that makes them feel respected, and they have a pretty decent relationship. And so when you're talking about making that great personality match, but you only want that person to come in once a month, you're not going to get any consistency. And so we don't go below that 1 day a week for 4 hours. And then the maximum somebody has our services is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Now, their phone number to call is 480-360-4141. They are 5-star rated everywhere, and you will know as soon as you talk to her, you'll understand why. Their website is seniorhelpers.com. Let's go back over here to some of these other questions that you want people to kind of think about, give you food for thought.
So another one under caregiver well-being under that category is, are you able to take regular breaks away from your care responsibilities to do personal errands, enjoy hobbies, visit with friends? This falls oftentimes with the spouse. And so the listeners that are listening today may have a spouse and they're caring for them, but they may have parents where you have your well parent and your not well parent. And the facts are that oftentimes the well parent is the one that winds up in the hospital because they're doing all these things and kind of totally overwhelmed, and they're really working so hard to care for the unwell parent that they've put stress on their bodies, and then they wind up with an illness in the hospital. And so when I go into people's homes where a spouse, oftentimes husband is the unwell spouse, and then the wife is the well spouse. And the wife, right, we're talking about people who are 50s, 60s, right, housewives who have spent their entire lives caring for their families, and that's a really important part of who they are. And so when they think about bringing somebody in, even though it's not for them, right, it's for their loved one, oftentimes I hear from people that there's a sense of failure. I didn't do something that I could have done. And that's really tough, right? Because they took pride in being able to care for their family, and now it's just kind of ballooned beyond what one person can manage. And so using this to help people understand, are you doing anything for yourself? Because the spouse is the well spouse is really the linchpin in the whole operation, right?
If you're not taking care of you, how can you take care of somebody else?
Right, and if your mom's not taking care of themselves, or your dad's not taking care of himself because he's busy taking care of mom, it can go either way. And that's really kind of where we come in and try to help people understand, are you doing anything enjoyable? Because as we get older, we spend more and more time thinking about our bodies, what they can do, what they can't do, what they were able to do, what they can no longer do, what do we want to be able to do. And I with my knee surgery, I just kind of have realized this for the first time, is it can kind of take over your life and your thoughts. And this is a way to relieve a little bit of that stress and bring in some help.
I also want to say that to try and do it on your own, first of all, I know everybody that had to do that for a while. It takes a toll on that person. It's not easy to do, especially when you're emotionally involved as a sibling to that child, or a husband, or a significant other. It's not an easy job. And
think about this. Think about any other job. Let's just say accountant, okay? So we're saying probably not as emotionally taxing as being a caregiver. But are you doing your best work? Are you doing just as good quality work on hour 20 to hour 60 to tax season, hour 90, right, of that week? Like, when you start looking at that, well, what people don't think about is there's 168 hours in a week, and if you're a primary caregiver, maybe that person lives with you, or even if they don't, you're thinking about them potentially up to 168 hours. That's like 4 full-time jobs.
Wow.
So if you think about it, you also want to preserve the quality of your care so that the caregiving you're doing is really, really high quality.
So you can actually intertwine you and them. You know, you're not required to do it at all, for sure. And you have a 4-hour minimum at least once a week, right?
4 hours once a week.
At least once a week, okay? That phone number again, it's 480-360-4141. What else should we ask? Another little question.
So let's other things that kind of give us an idea. So do you have a clear and accurate understanding of your loved one's medical condition and symptoms? So some people have some fairly complex medical conditions. In fact, those are really common now. So I'll use diabetes, COPD, congestive heart failure. Those are just 3 really common, right? Or even dementia. And any of those, there's so much treatment, there's so many medication changes, there's so many, and that can become overwhelming to somebody who also has to remember to get the kids to their soccer, and they have to go to their work and remember whatever your boss tells you to remember, right? And so there's just a lot, that's just even more information to remember. And a lot of people, I've heard from family members, don't get a full understanding from the doctor. Doctors are incredibly intelligent, they direct the care. But when it comes to explaining the nuances of a disease process and how you treat that at home to a family member, sometimes it goes over our head. And I consider myself to be relatively well informed, and even sometimes with my mom, I would have to go back and I'd have to take notes and like look it up, and hopefully I had the time to do that because some of the words were a little beyond, like it's something that I'd never heard before. So.
Well, I also want to say that a lot of people out there probably hold off because they think, number one, they think they can do it themselves, so they're saving money is what they're thinking. But I don't think they're always doing that. I think that when you, first of all, if you're putting that on yourself, it's not easy to do, and so you're probably not getting the good quality.
Well, you're paying, you just may not be paying with money. You may be paying with your time, your emotions, your physical well-being. And that's not to say family members can't be wonderful caregivers. That's not the point at all. In fact, they're probably some of the best caregivers. But can you do it for 168 hours, or do you need to part out some of that work?
Right.
And that's oftentimes we're working kind of in conjunction with family members.
So the littlest thing, when you say you take them to their appointments, or you know might have to go to the market for something, or what have you, your doctor's appointments, nails, manicures, what have you. But you also can help them with things like cooking a little bit. And I like the way you tell a story of not only, both doing it together.
Sure. Oh, yeah. We love to cook together. In fact, we love to do all of our tasks together. It depends on who our client is. So for me, if somebody wanted me to participate in laundry and I was the client, I would be totally disinterested because I am totally disinterested in laundry today. That's just me. For once again, I'll go back to some of our clients have kept their home for their whole lives. It's an integral part of who they are and what they believe about themselves. So they may not be able to grab all the wet laundry and get it into the dryer or do all of that or pull the sheets off the bed. But what's to say that couldn't be a team activity? Or maybe making a meal. We've got people with dementia who absolutely love to sit at the table and tear lettuce to make a salad. And maybe it's not done exactly how you would do it, right? But what we're doing is we want to help give people back the feeling of feeling valuable.
And participating. I love that. What is one more on here that we want to get to?
So the next thing that I would say is, do you often accept help with caregiving tasks from family members, community support, therapists, nurses, or professional caregivers? And I'm going to add something like your church family in there too. How often do people offer you something and you say, oh, thank you so much, I'll let you know, and then never follow up on it? Mm-hmm. Because that might tell you a little self-awareness for yourself about whether you're prepared to accept help or not. That's free help, and if you're not there to accept the free help, sometimes, I'll say just
I think they think you're going to be a burden. Oh, I don't want my mother to be a burden, or what have you.
Or people are what I would call a dutiful servant. That happens really often too. It's really, really common with the adult daughter, but I've seen adult sons that are wonderful, faithful servants to their parents, and they are grieving that their parents are getting older and more unwell and needing more help, and part of that grief is coming out as trying to do it all. Because if this is an uncontrollable situation, let's use cancer as an example. That is a very uncontrollable. That's the king of uncontrollable situations, and we want to take that away. But since we can't cure cancer, or at least most of your listeners probably cannot do that, what we try to do is control, since we can't control that, we try to control all these other things. And right, with control the things you can control, and that can sometimes turn us sort of into, I call it a stress pretzel. That's how I refer to it when it's myself. Like, I'm really kind of a stress pretzel right now. I'm twisted myself.
Well, you don't want to be a stress pretzel.
Stress pretzel.
And if you are in as a stress pretzel right now, give her a call and find out what can they do for you, because that's, I think, the first thing is let them hear. Go in especially and have an assessment and see what they can do for the people out there that are listening. I know it would be, I was very fortunate I didn't have to deal with that. They unfortunately passed before anything had happened. But why would you want to have it? When's the best time they call?
As soon as possible.
That
even if it's just for advice.
And again, that's another thing, is that it's all about resources and advice. She wants to help in any way. That phone number is 480-360-4141. It's seniorhelpers with an S.com. They're 5-star rated everywhere.